The London Marathon has put together a killer squad for the women's race. Three of the best runners of all time are coming out, and they're going to take a stab, no doubt, at the women's world record in the marathon. Who are the superstars that are coming to London? And let's unpack the storyline a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So first up, we have the defending champion, Jeres Jepchirchir. She's 31 from Kenya. And last year in London, she set the women's only world record of 2:16:16. So she's going to be one to watch for sure. And then we also have one of my favorites, Sifan Hassan from the Netherlands. She's just a versatile beast. She's good at anything from the 1500 to the marathon. And her PB is a 2:13:44, which she set in 2023 at the Chicago Marathon. And she also won the Olympic marathon last year. And then finally, we have the popular yet controversial Ruth Cheptngetich, who, as almost everyone in the running world knows, recently set the world record of 2:09:56 at the 2024 Chicago Marathon, which completely blew the previous record out of the water by almost 2 minutes. So we have three of the best runners in the world just towing the line in London, and it's going to be a really, really good one to watch.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, they haven't even announced the full field yet. And already we've done two stories about this women's field. First one being Hassan, who both you and I think are pretty psyched about the fact that she's coming back to London. She's won London once before.
Yeah.
And she's still relatively new to the marathon, right? Like, she's only run a few marathons. She's had a great deal of success, and she's one of already the fastest of all time. So that was like super exciting. And we're all a buzz about that. We're like, ooh, like, Sifan Hassan's coming to London. This is gonna be awesome. And then like this complete bombshell got dropped on us, like at some point very early this morning. We're recording on Wednesday morning. That Ruth Cheptngetich, as you said, the overall world record holder, like, just, I don't know, maybe the greatest athletic performance in sports history thus far in Chicago last fall. And so she's coming to London, and it just suddenly feels like it's her race to lose.
And then somewhere in the middle, Jeres Jepchirchir was also sprinkled in there.
Yeah, exactly.
In those announcements.
It's like, oh, and that's right, the returning champion who has got the women's only world record. She's also showing up too. So,
no biggie. Yeah. Just three of the top dogs.
Yeah, like just three. I mean, if you look down the all-time greatest marathon performances list, these three are right up there. And they've also each won quite a few major races and big championship events as well. Actually, it's worth highlighting that, like, just so that our listeners who maybe are they follow the Olympics, they follow the majors, but it's just like absorbing all of this like intel about each of these athletes is tough to kind of keep straight. Like Hassan, she's won London in 2023. She won Chicago in 2023. She had a little bit of a hiccup in Tokyo in 2024, where she came in fourth, which is still very impressive for a world-class marathon. But then she completely dominated the Olympics and won the Olympic marathon, I think, in one of the signature moments in Olympics.
I was going to say, one of the best finishes I've ever seen.
Yeah. And she's got a 2:13:44 personal best, which places her third all time.
Yeah.
So she is capable. And then you got Cheptngetich, who is won Chicago in 2021, 2022, and 2024. She interestingly only finished third at the 2020 London Marathon. So not super successful by her standards.
And she ran a 2:22 something, I believe, there. Yeah.
Although that was a weird year, because that was the COVID year where it was like a super small field and they were just running around St. James Park like over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, a very strange year. The London Marathon course is known to be world record fast. So, and she has a spotty record in world championship races. So if like you go back in her list of performances, she represented Kenya in 2021 at the Olympics in Tokyo. She DNF'd. 2022 World Championships in Eugene, she DNF'd as well. Didn't race the Paris Olympic marathon, but she did win super weird, intense 2019 World Championship marathon in Doha, which was
Hmm.
like at midnight and,
Yeah.
95 degrees Fahrenheit out. It was just brutal. So
Yeah.
up and down record.
Championship races are super different than kind of like the most of the major marathons, and that like there's no male pacers, which a lot of these racer or female runners like rely upon in the and to hit these like certain times that they want to hit. And yeah, in the championship races, it's kind of the women against the women, and if you're out there alone, it's a lot harder to manage your effort, I guess.
And we'll talk about that in a second, about the sort of dynamic the London Marathon produces in the women's only race,
Hmm.
because it is a little bit different than Berlin, for example, or
Yeah.
Chicago, where Ruth Cheptngetich, as you have noted in previous reporting, in Chicago, Cheptngetich really deftly leveraged uh, the advantages that she was given as the lead runner, with two
Hmm.
pacers sort of creating a wall against the wind for her and setting the pace for like
The
literally the entire
entire
race. Yeah.
race. Yeah.
Yeah. Like right into the finishing chute. So
Even that's normally like unseen too. Normally they're there till give or take halfway, but they were there the entire race.
exactly. Yeah. So I don't know if we're going to see anything like that
Yeah.
in London, and we can touch upon that in a minute. But I figured we got to give Jeres Jepchirchir her due as well. She
Hmm.
is 2021 Olympic marathon champion in Tokyo. She won New York in 2021, Boston in 2022. She's got the aforementioned women's only world record of 2:16:16. She set in London when she won the London Marathon last year. You and I were both there covering that event. We got to see that with our own eyes.
Yeah.
And she really impressed in the last few kilometers of that race, really took it over.
Yeah. She's a very tactical runner. She's very tactically astute. Like she might not be the fastest out there, but she knows just like when to make the moves, and she knows her opponent's weaknesses, and she knows how to run a championship style race. So I think that's going to make it really interesting. Like you have these people that are used to running in races like Chicago where they have the pacers, and then others who may not be as fast on paper but are just know how to play the game.
Also of note, her world record in the women's only half marathon is 1:05:16,
Yeah.
and that's 1 second slower than Sifan Hassan's personal best in the half of 1:05:15. And neither of those personal bests are anywhere near what Ruth Chepngetich ran in the first half of her
Of a
world
marathon.
record in marathon in Chicago, when she ran 1:04:02, which, if it were legal, if it were like applicable to records, that would be the fourth fastest half marathon ever run by a woman.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Ruth Chepngetich has a very like interesting and I guess gutsy style of racing. Like she just goes for it, and yeah, she releases the beast and kind of just hangs on for dear life. And sometimes it works, obviously, as we've seen in Chicago, and other times it doesn't. But when it works, like it works.
She is fade from the front all the way,
Yeah.
as they say in the racing world. So that leads me to some questions for you, or I guess overall questions you and I can both entertain, as well as the listener can entertain, as we wait for April to come at us and we get to see this race. The first one being, and I think we kind of have an answer to this already, but it's fun to muse about it until we get full clarity on this. The first one being, is London indeed going to continue its trend of being, with the women's race being a women's only race that involves uh, a women's field that goes out on their own, either has women pacers or no pacers at all, and is more of a championship style race where these three athletes and others will set the pace and decide, like collectively amongst them, we're going to run, because the women's only world record is 2:16:16. So it's like we're going to run 2:15 pace, 2:14 pace, 2:13 pace. Is it going to be like that, or are we going to see London get greedy and just say, you know what, let's get some male pacers in here. We've got three of the fastest people of all time, and presumably more top level athletes, and let's see how fast they can run. What do you think is going to happen there?
I think it's gonna stay as a women's only kind of world record attempt, for a few reasons. We mentioned this before we hit record, but I just think it's a bit too big of a jump for Sifan Hassan and for Jeres Jepchirchir to go from 2:13:44 and 2:16:16 to sub 2:10. I think, like even Sifan Hassan said in an interview, like give her a couple years of proper training and maybe she'll get there. But then also Ruth Cheptngetich in an interview also said that they're hoping to like work together and break that women's only world record. So I think it's, unofficially official that they're going to be really gunning for the women's only world record. And that will be kind of the setup of the race. It'll be a championship style.
I have grown to not entirely trust what Ruth Cheptngetich says, and not because I don't think that she's an honest person, but because I sat in the conference room when she was being, and then I talked to her briefly afterwards in Chicago, and totally believably, and I don't think she's a malicious or tricky person, she just didn't indicate that there was going to be any attack at this crazy sub 2:10 time. And then the gun goes in Chicago and she's running like 2:09, sub 2:09 pace for the first bunch of it. So it's like,
now,
and she just didn't care about like what anybody else was doing. She's just going after it. So.
I'm not saying she's not going to do that, but I think whether it's going to be championship style or they'll get greedy, I think it's going to stay championship style. What Ruth Cheptngetich will do, though, I think that's a whole other discussion in and of itself.
And to be really curious to see how these others respond to that as well.
Yeah.
Next question I have is, where's Jeres Jepchirchir in all this? Okay, so Jeres Jepchirchir, for those listening who are perhaps unfamiliar, before Cheptngetich came along and ran 2:09:56, Jeres Jepchirchir was the world record holder. She ran it in Berlin the year previously. She's still the second fastest all time at 2:11:53. She's the only other person besides Cheptngetich who's gotten under 2:12. And she is at the peak of her powers as well. She finished second in the Olympics last year in that really exciting and controversial race between her and Sifan Hassan to the sprint to the finish line in the marathon. She also came in second in the London Marathon last spring to Jeres Jepchirchir. So she's like a high quality performer, emerging as one of the great marathon runners as well. Be great if she was an addition to this field. I'd love to see that as well. It would sort of like, I feel like there's an opportunity right now to make this like must see TV for fans of running. I mean, it already is for fans of running, but to make it like maybe a bit of a broader appeal, that would be cool. Anybody else on the list that we want to, like the wish list for London?
I mean, I'm on the same boat as you. I'd love to see Jeres Jepchirchir. But I think another one that would be good to see is Sitoum Kebede. We were talking about that earlier. I think she's a bit of kind of an underdog. She is also, I believe, one of the fastest in that all-time list. But like she's never talked about because she doesn't have that big resume that people like Sifan Hassan or Cheptngetich have. But she could always come up and kind of surprise us, I think. So it'd be interesting to see her in here as well. So we'll have to wait for the full list, I guess.
She's run 2:15. She's 8th fastest all time. She won Tokyo last March. She just basically like dispensed of Sifan Hassan in that Tokyo race pretty easily. She's a very talented runner that hung on for the first 10 or so K with Ruth Cheptngetich in Chicago, running like they ran 30:14 for the first 10K in Chicago.
Yeah.
Which I think is like as good or better than a lot of personal bests in a road 10K for some of the top marathon runners in the world and the top 10K runners in the world for that matter. So she's a gamer. She's somebody to be cool to see as well. Bridget Koskay, who has had success in London and is a former world record holder and one of the fastest of all time. She hasn't had very good performances in the last, I'd say, year or two, but she's somebody also who would be neat to add to the field. Like they might as well make this like the greatest women's race of all time while they're at it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. It definitely has that potential.
So closing question for you here. Put you on the spot. This is the way too early prediction because we only know 3 runners in the women's race. Who do you got for the win in London?
Well, I think this is a pretty easy answer for me because I am a massive fan of the Dutchies. So, of course, I'm going to be rooting for Sifan Hassan. And I mean, not just because she's a Dutchie. I think she's also just like an incredible runner. She's super versatile. She's kind of crazy, honestly, but in like the best way. She just is gutsy. She runs. She just doesn't want to let people beat her. And she like shows that in her running. And it's always super, super exciting to watch her. Like in the Olympics with the marathon being her last race, like you would assume that she's going to be cracked because she just ran and medaled in the 5K and 10K on the track. And she kept getting kind of dropped from the group throughout the race, but then somehow came back and had this insane like sprint finish. So I think she always makes a statement whenever she runs, whatever distance she runs. So I'm going to be rooting for her. And yeah, it's going to be super exciting to watch.
I think that if there's anybody who can come back from the dead, say this race plays out where Ruth Cheptngetich is like, I run 2:09. I'm going to go out in 2:12 pace because for me that doesn't seem so scary. And she just drops the field. If there's anybody who can come back in the second half and hunt Cheptngetich down, I think it would be Hassan. Although Jepchirchir is also really capable of that, as we've seen in past races. So
yeah,
I think it's like a really cool dynamic that they're creating here with these athletes at this point in time in history.
Yeah, like I've mentioned, like Jepchirchir is just a very, very smart runner. And like she's been in the game for a while. So I think like she's just very good at staying low key when she needs to be low key. And like she's not gonna be someone like Ruth Cheptngetich who like goes out right from the get-go and is like, look at me go. She's gonna like sit in and wait, and she knows her moment. She knows herself very well. So I think that'll be interesting. And I think for Cheptngetich, honestly, this could also be a moment to maybe kind of silence some of the controversy. I think,
Big time.
Because she had this big jump in performance and it was a very controversial performance. There was a lot of back and forth over it. And I think that this is kind of a chance for her to maybe show some consistency. Like, okay, if you can put forth another really big performance, like I think that can kind of add to her stock a bit. Whereas like right now, she really only has this like one big performance that everyone is still questioning. And so I think this is a big opportunity for her, not just for the women's world record, but to kind of really cement herself as like, yes, I can run these big times. I can run these big races and do well. So that'll also be something to watch.
That's a really good point. I think that's a really good subplot here is there's in her own mind, she's got to feel a lot of pressure to run something pretty spectacular on her own, perhaps if she has to, just to kind of silence those critics, to prove to everybody that she's capable of even a dust deal 2:13 or 12 would that just would make her, she would own 2 of the 3 fastest times in history if she were able to pull that off. But
exactly.
it would cement what she had done previously as unquestionable because she would have to do it in different conditions, which would be much harder conditions, running that effectively on her own, right? Yeah, my prediction is that she goes out really hard like that and that she just hangs on for dear life and barely pulls it off, but still gets the win. What time do you think you think Sifan's going to win? So what time do you think that she's going to pull it off in?
I think she'll PB, but I don't think she'll break 2:12. I think it'll be like 2:13 and like low change.
Right. I'll go around the 2:13 and change as well, but I think it's going to be Cheptngetich just like white knuckling it to the finish line with everyone else catching up to her slowly but surely, which will create a very, very exciting and dramatic finish.
Yeah, I think regardless, it's going to be one of the biggest races of the year, and I'm super excited to watch it.
As am I. And we'll definitely be covering it. We'll do a live blog around it. We'll do a lot of coverage leading up to it. We'll even do a little bit of video stuff with it as well. So keep an eye on our feeds for that